Hi, it's Dr. Steve from Misericordia University, and welcome to Session 2, Basic Skills Requirement. This video represents part of our class TED100 Education Seminar, part of the Teacher Education Program at Misericordia University. In this video, let's introduce you to several TED people you really should know. Let's look at how you can satisfy the state's basic skills requirement, and then should you need to take any tests to satisfy that requirement, let's take a preview of the Longsdale test preparation program. So let's start this class today by looking at some people who are helpful to know in TED. Let's begin with how our program is administered. At the top of this flowchart, you can see our Vice President for Academic Affairs, and this person is over all of the 3 colleges within the university. Teacher Ed resides in the College of Health Sciences and Education, and here you can see our chair, Dr. Duffy, and all of our faculty. TED is actually one of the largest majors on campus because due to secondary ed and mid-level, we also have our students matriculating in all these different programs. And here you can see the College of Arts and Sciences and the different departments with which we work: biology, chemistry, math, the history department, and also English. Within the TED department, there are several people who it's very useful to know, and these people you might not have had the opportunity to meet with just yet. First is Dr. Colleen Duffy. Dr. Duffy is our department chair. She's the person who is in charge of the teacher ed department, and you'll hear from her from time to time. She'll be sending various official notifications out. If there are any particular issues you have in terms of status and retention in the program, she'll be the one who will be talking to you about it. If you have any kind of issues or problems while on campus, certainly you would approach your advisor or faculty member first. But should you need more help, you could always approach our department chair. If you're a transfer student, it's very good to know Dr. Susan Tomasic. Dr. Tomasic is the coordinator of transfer students. She'll be the person who will work with you on your intake into the program and make sure that you're getting credit for any classes that you've taken before, and to make sure that you have a good program of study so that you'll know exactly how long it takes to travel through our program and exactly which courses to take along the way. Mrs. Shirley Breimeyer serves as our Director of Student Teaching and Field Experiences. So everyone on our campus gets to meet with Mrs. B and also work with her throughout 4 years, because every semester everyone engages in a field experience which culminates in your senior year with student teaching. This is the person who coordinates all of those experiences. The last person we're going to meet right now is Mrs. Betty Ann Duffy, and no relation to Dr. Colleen Duffy. Mrs. Duffy is our TED administrative assistant, and that means that she supports all of the faculty and the administration and serves our students in many ways as well. She's a person who helps Mrs. Breimeyer track the clearances, professional clearances, to make sure that you're ready to go into both student teaching and all field experiences. So she's a person that you'll hear from time to time. Also, her office is on the floor with all of the faculty. So should you have any questions when you're on the TED floor, feel free to stop in and talk to Mrs. Duffy, and I know she'll be very helpful to you. Let's briefly meet all of our TED faculty. Each faculty member teaches at least 12 credits per semester, maintains at least 4 office hours every week. We all advise a number of TED students, and we also help to supervise field experiences, practicum experiences, and student teaching. Throughout your years at Misericordia in the Teacher Ed program, you'll definitely have the opportunity to meet and learn with and from each of these faculty members. Let's get a brief introduction to each one. If you are an early childhood and/or special ed major, you'll definitely get to interact with Dr. Bragg. Dr. Bragg is our math guru, and she teaches math methods and also many of the early childhood courses. We already introduced you to Mrs. Breimeyer, and she's the Director of Student Teaching and Field Placements. So everyone in our program gets to meet with her throughout 4 years. And Mrs. Breimeyer will plan to attend our class, so you'll get to hear from her personally in a few short weeks. Since I'm putting everyone else's picture here, I also included myself, and I teach educational technology. I'm the technology specialist in our program, and you know that I'm teaching educational seminar and the field that goes with it. As a musician and an artist, I also teach integrating the arts because I'm certified K through 12 in Pennsylvania. I also teach secondary ed courses. So if you're a secondary ed major, I'll definitely get to see you in several courses throughout your time here on our campus. And I also teach graduate courses. So after you graduate from Misericordia and get a good teaching position, if you come back, you may still get to encounter me in the graduate courses. I introduced Dr. Duffy earlier, but in addition to being chairperson of the TED, she also teaches a number of courses. She teaches adolescent development, she teaches special ed courses, and she also teaches in our graduate program. If you are early childhood and/or special ed, you'll get to encounter Dr. Laughlin. Dr. Jody Laughlin teaches reading methods and a host of our early childhood classes. You got to meet Dr. Tomasik earlier as the transfer coordinator, but also in our program she teaches educational planning, which is a course that everyone will take, so you all get to meet her. She also teaches cultural awareness, and you might be taking that course this semester or possibly your second semester on our campus. She teaches educational psychology, social studies methods, and also a number of our mid-level courses. So if you're a mid-level person, you'll also spend a lot of time with Dr. Tomasik. Everyone studying to be a teacher in Pennsylvania must have certain experiences in special education. So our special ed guru is Dr. Roberta Yeager. So everyone will have an opportunity to meet Dr. Yeager in some special ed courses. In addition to our full-time faculty, Misericordia also employs a number of adjunct or part-time instructors to teach some of the TED courses. Now these folks are selected to teach because of their expertise in specific areas. And in most cases, they are current teachers or administrators in local school districts. Now, they will not have offices on campus, but they're very available, and they'll all certainly provide a phone and also email contact information with you. Let's start looking at the section in the TED guidebook that deals with admissions. If you are a traditional student, meaning you're coming directly in from high school into Misericordia, then the TED admission requirements are that you have to have a B average or better in high school, or you must be in the top half of your graduating class. You also have to have demonstrated interest and experience in teaching. Now, if you are considered a transfer student, meaning that you have transferred in from another college, or you've already been at Misericordia, let's say for a semester or two, but you were in a different program, then the requirements are just a little bit different. And the reason is because you already have some college experience under your belt, so to speak. So once again, everyone needs some demonstrated interest and experience in teaching. Now you have to have a GPA of at least 3.0. Now, if you didn't hit that yet, then you'll just officially be called undeclared until you finish your first semester at Misericordia. You hit a 3.0, and then that's taken care of. And then you have to complete the basic skills requirement. Now, if you haven't yet, don't worry, because you're in the right place. In this course, we're going to show you how to do that. And also, you have to possess your clearances, the clearances that show that you are eligible to be able to teach based upon the state police, the federal government, child abuse hotline, and so on. And again, if you don't have them already, don't worry, you're in the right place. In this course, we're going to show you how to obtain those clearances. Just to review, for everyone coming into our program, during your first semester or two, you complete the education seminar, you're in that right now, and the field that's associated with that, and then you're expected to achieve a 3.0 cumulative GPA. Now, if you're an incoming freshman, it's okay to have a 2.8 at the end of your freshman year, at the end of the first two semesters. But then the next year, we would expect to see a 3.0. Now realize that that requirement is not the university's requirement, but rather Pennsylvania Department of Education's requirement. And then everyone's expected to complete and satisfy the basic skills requirement. And then we said already in class that you will, your materials will be reviewed every year. Your very first review is called the initial review process. So let's turn toward looking at this state-required certification testing, and ideally, possibly getting out of taking some of the tests. There are two sets of tests that future teachers take. Number one, we take the basic skills requirement, and this is satisfied by the end of sophomore year, traditionally, or before what we call in our program candidacy. And we're going to talk about candidacy. And then when you're ready to complete the program in your senior year, then you take content area tests or tests as appropriate to the particular program that you're in. For today's class, let's focus on the basic skills requirement. The basic skills are defined as reading, writing, and math. The basic skills are designed to measure skills that are learned in high school. So realize you could take those basic skills right now. You could have actually taken them prior to this because it's based on high school learning. And they are considered to be the basic core skills that every teacher should be competent in before entering the classroom. Now, there are three ways that you can satisfy this basic skills state requirement. Number one, you can check your SAT or ACT scores because you might already have passed in one or more of these subject areas and don't have to take any exams. Number two, at Misericordia, we've determined and worked with the state to determine that if you hit a certain specified minimum score in certain college classes, and we're going to look at what those classes are, and if they pertain to you, in that case, you can be said to have satisfied the basic skills through those college classes. The third way you can satisfy basic skills, the traditional way, is to sit for a basic skills test. And there are two offered currently, one by ETS and one called the PAPA test. Now realize if you've already taken any of these things or satisfied basic skills, any of the individual reading, writing, or math in any one system, you can mix and match. So in other words, if you satisfy one through SAT and one through a college class and one through an ETS test, that's okay to do. You can mix and match in the state of Pennsylvania as long as you satisfy a reading, a writing, and a math. So let's start by considering the SAT method of satisfying basic skills. Now I'm going to attempt to give an overview here. Realize that you don't have to memorize all of these scores and all these particular requirements, but rather your advisor and also I can help you through looking at this and looking at your particular scores to see if it really does apply. But under the SAT, under the new test, if you scored really well on SATs, you don't have to take any other tests. In reading, in the new test, you'd have to achieve a 27. Now, I'm also talking about the old test here, because in the old test, you could get a 500. So you can tell very quickly if you're under the new or the old test system by the level of your score, because there's a big difference between the two. In the math, if you hit a 26 or 500 in the old test, then you could say that you will have satisfied the math requirement. Writing and language, in the new system, a 28. And again, in the old system, it's a 500. Now, one thing to say about the writing portion. In the SAT world, fortunately or unfortunately, students now have an option of saying, I'm going to take an essay and pay a little more to the SAT to take that, or I'm not going to. So realize that you may have an English component to your SATs, but if you did not actually do an essay, then that English component will not satisfy the writing part of the basic skills. The reading, very straightforward. The math, absolutely straightforward. The writing part, you would have to have completed an essay. We also have a thing called the composite scores. Now, we're going to take a look at that in a few moments. If you took the ACT test in high school, it's very similar to the SAT in many ways, including in the way in which they're looked at in the state of Pennsylvania. They just have their own levels of scoring. So if you achieved a 22 in the reading portion, now you could say you've satisfied basic skills in reading. If you achieved a score of 8 or higher in writing, if you achieved 21 or higher in math, you can now say that you have satisfied the basic skills. Again, we don't expect you to memorize or remember all of this, but hopefully to prompt you, if you've taken SAT or ACT, pull out your scores and let's take a look at them. And you don't have to look at them alone. If you think this might apply to you, speak with your advisor to see if you qualify. Because this mixing and matching of different scores to see if you've satisfied the basic skills requirement is pretty involved and can be pretty complicated, PDE has created what they call their calculator, which is really a spreadsheet, but it's a spreadsheet that will help you calculate and determine if your scores and different methods have qualified you to pass and satisfy this requirement. Let me do a quick demonstration of that. Here I have opened in Excel the PDE Basic Skills Certification Calculator. And we were pointing out that trying to figure out and determine if you have passed the basic skills because of the plethora of methods that you can use to pass them can be very confusing. So this calculator can help in the process. Again, keep in mind, you can always not just work with this on your own, but you can speak with your advisor to gain some help. Here you can see that any method that you have taken, you can type in the score. So if you've taken an SAT test, you can go to SAT Old or SAT New and type the number in here. So I'm going to go into the old test for a moment, and I'm going to type 500. And then ultimately it's going to come over and say, did I pass or did I not pass? So I can add these scores into this calculator and ultimately get a determination over here. If I click into the other tab on the bottom called Qualification Rules, this will now allow me to view all of the current regulations regarding determining if I passed or not. For example, it starts off with the ACT, and here are all the particulars with ACT. Here's the core, the ETS core academic test. Here's the PAPA test. Here's the SAT, the old and the new exams. Here's the PPST, the praxis, the PAPA tests. So All of the particulars are in here, but keep in mind that you can talk to your advisor so we can simplify this process for you and take away any concerns that you might have. Now, if you don't qualify via SAT or ACT scores, don't worry. There's a second method we can pursue, and that is by taking specific courses at Misericordia. So let's start by looking at courses that satisfy the reading basic skills requirement. If you can attain a B or better in one of the courses in each category below, so we've got two categories, American Literature. PDE requires American Literature. So any of the courses that are listed here under American Literature, which also includes British Literature, if you get a B or better, and also our teacher ed course called SPE 111. And the title of that course is Special Ed and Exceptional Learners. If you can get a B or better in an American Literature and SPE 111 together, then you can say that you have satisfied the basic skills in reading. In terms of satisfying the writing course, everyone at the university, unless you've transferred in, will take a university writing seminar course. So if you can attain a B or better in university writing seminar, then you can say that you have satisfied the writing basic skills requirement. Now, notice that not only English 151, which is the typical course that everyone in teacher ed takes, but if you started off in history or philosophy, or if you took the religion version of the university writing seminar, it still counts as well. The third area of basic skills is mathematics. So if you can attain a grade of B or better in both of these following courses, Math 120, which is math reasoning, and also Math 115, which is basic statistics, if you get a B in both of those courses, you can now say that you have satisfied the math portion of the basic skills. Now, one thing to note, though, this course way of getting out of the math test does not apply if you're either a mid-level or secondary ed math major. In your case, you would still have to pass through either the SAT, ACT, or by taking one of the exams, which is ETS, Core, or the PAPA test. So let's look at our third way of satisfying basic skills, and that is by taking a state test. So the test, they're actually national tests. ETS, Core Academic Skills, is run by the Praxis company, and also the PAPA version of the test, and PAPA refers to the Pre-Service Academic Performance Assessment. Let's take a better look at these tests, but again, hopefully you won't have to take any of these tests. So when does everyone have to pass the basic skills? When would you have to take these tests should you need to take them? If you're a traditional student, you need to take them within your first year of being on the campus. And you've got a second year to be able to pass them and satisfy the requirement. So the point that we examine that is the end of the sophomore year, and that's when we have candidacy to actually be officially known as a candidate in teacher education. If you're a non-traditional or transfer student, we're still aiming at what's known as the sophomore year, even though you might not put a full 2 years in at Misericordia because you've already come from another program or another institution. So the timeline is sped up just a little bit. We ask you to sit for these tests, or again, in another way, satisfy the basic skills requirement within your first semester and pass through that requirement by the end of your second semester, because after that, then you'll be looking at moving on to the junior year, and that's when we have the candidacy taking place. If you choose to take one of these exams, then you have a choice. Which company which exam will you take? So some of the latest information provided by PDE states that candidates have been performing better on one test versus the other. Candidates in Pennsylvania have been doing better on the Praxis, the ETS Core versus the PAPA test. So let's take a little better look at that. Here you can find data that was supplied to the teacher education programs within Pennsylvania about how students were performing on the two different tests. Notice that the students who were taking the PAPA test were doing not as well as the people taking the ETS Core set of tests. Both versions of this test use a very similar scoring method. Each has what's known as a cut score. In other words, it's the passing score. If you hit that score, then you have passed that particular exam. Now, the second method that they use also is called the composite score method. What this means is, if you have not passed one or more of those tests, but if you've done very well in the other tests, remember there are 3 tests total, reading, writing, and math. If you didn't do well in one, but you did very well in maybe 2 others, and if you hit a minimum score, at least a certain score in the one that you failed, you might be able to pass all 3 based on your other 2 scores. So again, that's a little complicated, but let's get an overview of this. Keep in mind that your advisor can help you figure these things out. Let's begin by examining the ETS Core academic skills for educators. And on our Blackboard page, and also in the TED Clearances Blackboard page that's open to all TED students, we maintain links to these tests. In this table, you can see the official names of the 3 ETS Core tests for reading, writing, and for math. There's the test number, and then you can see the passing score. So that's that cut score. If you hit, for example, a 156 on reading, you have now passed that particular test. What happens if you did not pass one of those tests, but let's say you took the 2 others and you did pass them, and in fact you did very well in them? Then you might qualify through the composite method. So for composite, what we do is we start by taking the qualifying score, or that passing or that cut score, and add them up. In the case of this test, they add up to 460. Then there's a minimum score that is associated with each of those tests. So for example, let's say you're not doing as well in math, you have to at least have hit the 132 mark. If you go over that, that's wonderful. But if you didn't hit 142, that's the passing score, at least if you hit 132, then let's add up your other scores. And if they hit 460 or higher, and you hit the minimum score in each of the tests, then through composite method, it's stated that you have now passed all 3 tests, even though you didn't pass one of them. Let's look at a simulated example just to make sure that you understand what's happening here. In this case, this person achieved a 158 on the reading test. That's really good because 156 is passing. They've exceeded the score. Writing, 162 was required, but they exceeded it, 164. But the math, they got a 138, and a 142 was the passing score. But don't worry, let's start by seeing, did this person get at least a 132? Well, yes, they did, 138. So they hit the minimum score. Let's total all these scores. They total 460. Good. Now this person can be said, even though they technically failed the math, not by much, but they did, they could still say that they have passed all 3 of these tests. So that's what the composite score means. The ETS Core test is not able to be taken like from your home or remotely. You actually have to travel to a test center. As of the recording of this video, the closest centers to Misericordia include the Pearson Professional Center in Scranton, that's up in Clark Summit, which is about a half hour from Misericordia's campus. Luzerne County Community College offers it in their Hazleton Center, and also Bloomsburg University offers the test. Hopefully you won't have to take any of these tests, but let's take a look at the second version of the test very quickly, just to show you what that test is. That one's called the PAPA test. And again, the links are on our course page and also the TED Clearances Blackboard page. In terms of scoring, the PAPA test is very, very similar to the ETS score. The only difference is that they have their own numbers in terms of the scores, their own unique scores. But the composite score still applies. The total, in that case, when you add up all the qualifying scores, they total 633. So it's just a different number, but it works in the exact same way. You can technically fail one of the tests, but based on your composite score, when you add them all up, and if you hit that minimum score, you can still be said to have passed all three. So very similar. To take the test, it's the same situation as with the ETS core exams. You have to travel to a testing center. Now, these folks have testing centers in Montage, right by the ball field. They've got a center in Pittston and also one in Hazleton. If you were to compare the structure of both exams from these two different companies, you'll notice that there's more time allowed in the ETS version than in the PAPA test. However, you'll also notice that there are more questions that are asked in the ETS core exam versus the PAPA test. Realize that in both tests, some questions that you will encounter will not actually add up toward your score, but they'll be test questions. In other words, there'll be sample questions that they're testing out to determine their validity and to see if they'll be used in future exams. In terms of costs, you'll notice that the ETS version of the exam costs a little bit more than the PAPA test. But keep in mind that PDE has informed us that overall, in the last several years, students who sat for the ETS version of the test did better, which translates to they did not have to retake a test, because that can add up. Are you a member of our ALP program, our Alternative Learners program at Misericordia? If you are, and if you have to sit for one of these tests, talk to the people at ALP, because what they'll do is they can most likely help you get extended time or alternative testing arrangements in terms of physical disabilities or learning or cognitive disabilities. There's a form found online at the sites where you sign up for these tests. And again, you have to have them signed by officials at the university. But if you're part of that Learners Project, definitely participate in this, because what that will do is, for most students who apply, it gives them more time to answer the questions, and a little bit more time helps out significantly in terms of score. With either version of the test, when do I learn my results? Well, the reading and the math, you can actually be told your scores right there before you leave the testing center, and you'll receive an official notification thereafter. For the writing test, score reports are normally available about 20 days after the testing, and that is due to the fact that you're doing a writing sample, so adjudicators have to actually read it and score it by hand. If you do sit for one of these standardized tests, a valid question is, should I guess if I don't know the answer? And the response to that is, yes, you can guess. Realize that your answers will not be marked wrong. They won't be marked incorrect. Instead, your score is based on the number of questions that you answer correctly. So there's no penalty or there's no subtracting of your score if you take a guess or answer something wrong. So it is to your advantage to pace yourself. Make sure you allow enough time to be able to focus in on each and every question. The more questions you can respond to, the better chance that you're going to get a higher score. If you have to sit for a test, it's a good idea to do some preparation for that test. That way you can score and achieve your best and hopefully not have to retake any sections of that test. PDE suggests a number of ways that you can prepare. You can certainly purchase a review book that will be published by one of the many different companies who popularly publish test preparation books, like the Barron's Company, the Kaplan Company, and so on. You can find these in online or in stores, in bookstores. ETS has identified different Khan Academy videos that will help you brush up on the content in different areas. Butler County Community College offers an online test preparation course. It's not free, it's a low cost, it's a course at their college, but they state that when people take their course, it greatly helps them scoring and achieving much higher. And finally, I'd like to call your attention to the Longsdale online test prep course. This is not a free course, but it is free to Misericordia students because our program, TED, pays for it and offers it free of charge for you. So we looked at a lot of ways to satisfy what's known as the basic skills requirement. For more information, contact your advisor, because your advisor can help verify that you satisfy the basic skills through either SAT or ACT, or that you can take certain courses, and that person can help you plan those courses to take to satisfy the basic skills. And that person can also determine if you have passed either ETS or PAPA tests and can remind you of how best to prepare for those tests. So don't forget to talk to your advisor. That person will be a great source of information for you. As we wrap up our consideration of the basic skills requirement, let me point out that a state law in Pennsylvania that took effect as of August 2015 requires that all TED students must pass the basic skills requirement before they're allowed formal program admission. And program admission in our school is known as the candidacy time. Anyone who's not passed this state requirement will not be allowed to advance in the program. You won't be able to take the advanced teacher ed courses. As you approach your junior year, and keep in mind if you're a transfer student, you don't have that much time to approach that because your timeline is a little bit shorter than that of a traditional student. As you approach that junior year mark, all TED students complete something called the application for formal candidacy to the TED program. It's at that time that you need to show proof of passing the basic skills. If you don't pass by that time, keep in mind, you will not be able to register for advanced TED courses. And remember that that's not a university requirement, but rather that's a state law mandated item. So let's round out today's class by taking a look at how you can prepare for the basic skills test through the Longsdale online test prep program. Remember that preparation is a key component to successfully passing the basic skills test should you need to take the tests, and to do so on your first go-around. To help prepare for the basic skills tests if you need to take them, remember TED has purchased access to an online test prep program. To access the Longsdale test prep course online, you simply navigate to the following website. We provide that for you on our Blackboard pages. You're going to click Sign In, and you're going to say Register for a new account. And in our TED Clearances Blackboard page, we provide you with our school number and our school key, and you simply enter those pieces of information in order to be allowed to create your new account. As you enter the system, you'll be asked to enter your name and an email address, and they may ask for a student ID number, but don't worry about this because it's open to all of our students, so we don't track that. The system will give you a username and a password to use on future visits. When you enter the system, your screen will look similar to this. Start by clicking on Reading, Writing, or Math to determine which area you're going to focus on first. Here I've entered the reading course and test. And what I suggest is start by trying a practice test listed on the bottom of this page. So start with a practice test. No one's going to see those scores except you, and determine where your areas of strength are and areas of deficiency, where you could use some extra brushing up and preparation. And then click on the other pieces toward the on the side panel and take a look at the material. They provide a lot of content, and you can brush up on many different areas, and then go back in and take another practice test. By using this method, you'll really review the material, and you'll be much more prepared to sit for the exam. To sum up and review, during this online class, we had the opportunity to meet some people in the teacher ed program and in our administration, and we also focused in on exams, particularly the basic skills requirement by the state of Pennsylvania, the PDE. So the good news is that you may not have to take any exams at all. We looked at a number of systems, a number of ways, methods that you could use to not have to take a test. But should you need to take a test, you can also log into the Longsdale online test prep system and get that preparation for free. So don't go it alone. Feel free to talk to me or talk to your advisor to make sure that you've passed through those basic skills or that you can plan to pass through them. Have a wonderful week, and see you at our next class.